I think one of the biggest lies in trading education is that discipline's the problem. There's a million videos on it. I'm guilty of this too. Look, it's not, because discipline, it isn't the root problem. Think about this. Overtrading, it's not the root problem. Revenge trading, that's not a root problem, right? FOMO is not a root problem. Fear is not a root problem. Those are just symptoms. So the real question then becomes this: why does our brain keep choosing those behaviors? Why do we keep self-sabotaging our own edge? I think the answer is different for every trader. The symptoms might be the same. We all deal with it, right? Maybe your identity is tied to winning. Maybe you're chasing dopamine. Maybe you grew up believing that opportunity doesn't come around twice. Maybe you are trying to prove something to yourself or somebody else. And until you understand that, I think you're going to spend years trying to fix your trading when your trading was never actually the thing that was broken. And what if I told you that your biggest problem in trading, whatever it is, think about it for a second, hit pause and think about it, name it, say it out loud. What if it has nothing to do with trading in the first place? Seriously, think about it. Think about it just for a second. Every day I get messages from traders saying, I keep revenge trading, I keep overtrading, FOMO, fear, blah, blah. I move my stop, I can't pull the trigger, I panic and take profits too early. And here's what almost every single piece of trading advice says: just be more disciplined. Okay, cool, right? And like I said, I'm guilty of this. But what if discipline isn't actually the problem? Because if you keep telling yourself, if you've been telling yourself for the last 2 years that you just need to be more disciplined and you're still making the same mistakes, maybe you're trying to solve the wrong problem. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how two traders can make the exact same mistake, but for completely different reasons? One guy overtrades because he's bored. Another overtrades because he desperately needs to make rent. One trader hesitates because they don't trust their strategy, and another hesitates because they're terrified of being wrong. One revenge trades. Why? I don't know. Maybe because they hate losing money. They need to make it back. Another because losing makes them feel like a failure. It's the same behavior, but completely different causes. And I think that's where I think the entire trading industry gets it backwards. We've become obsessed with fixing behaviors without ever asking where those behaviors come from. Imagine you walked into a doctor's office, right? And you said, "Doc, my head hurts." He hands you some painkillers, the headache goes away, but 6 months later, he found out you had high blood pressure the entire time. The headache was not the problem. It was your body's way of telling you something deeper was going on. Now, trading works exactly the same way. Overtrading, man, that is the headache, right? Fear, that is the headache. FOMO is a headache. Moving your stop is a headache. They're symptoms, just like the headache. So the question then, the question isn't how do I stop overtrading? The question is, why does my brain keep choosing overtrading in the first place? Because your brain doesn't just wake up in the morning trying to sabotage your trading. It thinks it's protecting you. Think about this, right? It thinks it's protecting your identity, protecting your ego, protecting your bank account, maybe protecting the stories you've believed about yourself for years. And here's the part that blew my mind when I started thinking about this. The market doesn't create those stories. It doesn't. It just exposes them. That's why two people can learn the exact same strategy, sit in the exact same Discord, watch the exact same mentor, and end up with completely different results because they didn't bring the same person to the charts. One brought a scarcity mindset. One brought confidence. One brought anxiety. One brought patience. One brought a need to prove themselves. You can't bring emotional baggage, right? People bring emotional baggage to the market that they don't even know that they're carrying. And the strategy isn't different. And I think that's where real trading psychology actually begins. And look, here's where this gets really interesting. I want you to think about the last emotional trade you took. Not your last trade, your last emotional trade. We all do it. The one where you knew what you were doing and you did it anyways. Maybe you chased, maybe you moved your stop, maybe you doubled down on a loser or you revenge traded. Now ask yourself what nobody ever asks. Have I done this somewhere else in my life? Because I would bet the answer is yes. I would bet. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say the answer is yes, right? Now my issue when I first started trading, I didn't need to make money. Mine was a dopamine thing. Mine was a gambling thing, right? I was never the person that could walk into a casino with their debit card and sit down and play because I would hit up that ATM machine and keep taking money out. So what did I have to do? Leave my debit card at home. I would go to the casino with a set amount of money and that's it, right? So I bet you the answer is yes. You just gotta be honest with yourself. Mine was a gambling dopamine thing, right? How about the trader who can't wait for confirmation? I bet you they struggle with patience outside of trading too. And I think this is where you have to be honest with yourself. How about the trader who has to be right? You hear me say this all the time. Trading isn't about being right or wrong. I've been right and lost money, and I've been wrong and made money in these markets. And if you've been trading for a while, you know what I mean there. But I bet you they probably hate admitting they're wrong in relationships too. Think about it. Your conversations with your wife, your friends, I bet you hate admitting you're wrong. How about the trader who jumps from strategy to strategy every single month? Now, you might jump from crazy idea to crazy idea in your life. And not necessarily crazy, but maybe it's business idea to business idea, or hobby to hobby, right? My wife. Always believe in the next thing will finally be the one, right? How about the person who risks too much money in the markets? I bet you they make impulsive decisions everywhere else too. How about the trader who freezes after a loss, right? Just done. Just, I can't pull that trigger again. I bet you they spent their entire life avoiding failure, right? Do you see what I'm getting at here? Trading does not invent these behaviors. It just magnifies them. The market's a mirror. A lot of people don't like what looks back. Money has a funny freaking way of turning the volume all the way up. That's why trading feels so personal. You don't just lose 50 bucks, right? You start thinking, right? It's not just the money. Now you start thinking, right? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, right? Why does everyone else seem to get it except for me? Because that's the pitch that social media paints, but that ain't the case, because we all know most people, a high percentage of people, fail at being a trader. And guess what happens? Before you know it, you're not trading the market anymore. You're not fighting yourself, and man, is that exhausting. Man, is that exhausting, because look, you are not going to out-discipline a belief that you've never questioned. Let me say that again for the people in the back. You're not going to out-discipline a belief you've never questioned. Question them. Think about someone who's terrified to pull the trigger, right? I know people like this, right? Most people say they need confidence. Okay, maybe, but I push back against that. Maybe you're terrified of looking stupid. Those are two completely different problems. Take someone who overtrades, for example. Look, people love calling them addicted. I have that issue too, right? You're just addicted to pushing buttons. And maybe they are. Maybe they are. But maybe they're lonely. Maybe trading is the only thing that makes them feel engaged. Maybe every single time the market wiggles, they feel like they're missing out on the chance of a lifetime to change their life. Now think about the trader who cuts a winner early, right? Everyone says they're scared. All right, okay. Scared of what? Is it losing profit? Or maybe they were brought up or raised in a certain way that if you don't take what's in front of you, you're going to end up with nothing. That's that scarcity mindset, right? So those aren't trading lessons. Those are life lessons. And life has a funny way of following you into the market. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that traders make is believing they need another strategy, right? And we all know that's not the case. It's almost never the strategy. You can use that excuse for a couple months in the markets, but that's it. That's it. That's all you get to use that excuse for when you're brand new for a couple months. What you need is self-awareness, because once you understand why your brain keeps reaching for those certain behaviors, that monkey part of our brain, then you're going to stop fighting yourself and you got to start working with yourself. And that's a completely different game, and it is a game changer. Now, I want to do something a little bit different here. I don't want to talk about trading. I want to talk about you, me, us, and humans in general, because if trading really is a mirror, then we need to stop staring at the reflection and start looking at who's standing in front of the mirror. So I'm going to walk through a few things that I think that drive a lot of traders. So I mentioned there's the symptom and then the root cause, right? Let's look at some of these, right? And look, maybe none of these are you, maybe one of them is, maybe all of them are. The point is not to sit here and just diagnose ourselves. The point is just to start asking better questions. If you want to be a better trader, then start asking the harder, better questions. So let's start with scarcity here. This one is huge, right? So if you feel like every single trade has to work, or if a missed setup feels painful, or if watching somebody else makes money ruins your day, or if it constantly feels like you're running out of time, right? You might not have a trading problem. You might just have a scarcity mindset. Scarcity doesn't start with trading, guys. It starts with the belief that opportunities are limited. That money will just somehow disappear, right? That if you don't take this trade, another one might not ever come. And the market punishes that. What is the market reward? We know this, right? You've heard it a million times. Patience pays, right? Scarcity rewards what? Urgency. Those two don't mix, right? Patience and urgency, those don't mix. It's fundamentally flawed from the beginning. So don't just ask, how do I stop FOMO? Ask yourself, where else in my life do I believe there will not be other opportunity? Now, that's a much more uncomfortable question. That's a better question, I think, because it's more useful. Think about it, right? Now, here's where I would challenge you. Don't just read another trading book. Go learn how people think about money. Read the psychology of money. Listen to Morgan Housel interviews while you're driving. Listen to them. Put it into YouTube, right? It's not about trading. It's about money. Talk to people who've built wealth over decades instead of months. Look at how investors think compared to gamblers. Now, if you grew up around financial stress, and I did, right? You have to reflect on how those experiences shaped your relationship with money today. Ask your parents how money was talked about in your house. Maybe you don't even know this. Was it always scarce? Was it always stressful at home? Because those stories don't just magically disappear when you open a brokerage account, guys. I'm telling you, they don't. They come with you. You bring them with you. And every time you click buy or sell, they're sitting there right beside you. They're sitting right here and right here, right beside me. And they're still there to this day. That's the pattern I want you to start noticing throughout this video. The market didn't invent your beliefs, right? It simply gave them a dollar value. How about identity? This is a big one that I've seen a lot of traders struggle with over the years. What if every single losing trade is just an attack on you personally? What if it feels personal? What if your account balance becomes a scoreboard for your self-worth? How do you actually start changing that? Now, first, get away from trading for a minute, right? Seriously, if your identity has become wrapped up in being a trader, then you need to study people who perform at the highest level in completely different fields. Go listen to Kobe talk about missing shots. Go talk to Michael Jordan about losing. You don't think they face adversity? Because they did. Go listen to Jocko Willink talk about failure. He's got podcasts. Go watch documentaries on elite athletes. Not because they're athletes, but because they're human beings. And I think they understand something that a lot of traders often don't. A bad performance doesn't make you a bad performer. Those are two completely different things. Now, second, read books that have nothing to do with the charts. Read Mindset. It's by Carol Dweck. It explains the difference between people who believe failures defines them and people who believe failure teaches them, right? Then read The Inner Game of Tennis. This is a big one. I don't care if you've never picked up a tennis racket. I don't care if you hate freaking tennis. This is one of the best books ever written on performance under pressure. Now, I'm not sending you to trading books. Notice that, right? I'm sending you to learn how humans perform, because what trading really is, it's a performance sport. Now, I'm not saying we're like Michael Jordan or Kobe, right? Don't twist my words, but it's an elite performance thing that has a high attrition rate. 90 to 95% of people fail. Now, third, I want you to start paying attention to the language you use. This week, every time you say things or catch yourself saying things like this, or, sort of like it, I'm a loser, I'm just not disciplined, I'm terrible at trading, replace it. I made a poor decision. I broke my process, right? I need to improve this skill, because boy, is trading a skill, right? Your identity is fixed. Your decisions, we can change those, right? Your identity is what it is, but we can change decisions. One will keep you stuck, right? The other gives you something to improve. Now, fourth, I think, look, build your life, or a life that has nothing to do with trading. You have to. Now, this one's huge. Go golf, right? Go lift weights. Coach your kid's baseball team, right? Learn an instrument, build a business, volunteer, have hobbies, man. Have hobbies where winning and losing doesn't involve your account balance, your P&L, right? A red line going up or down, or a green line. I think when trading becomes who you are and your entire identity, every losing day is going to feel like your entire life is falling apart. Finally, look, I want you to do an exercise. I really do. Tonight, I want you to grab a notebook, not your trading journal, just a blank notebook, right? I got a million freaking blank notebooks by me. And I want you to, at the top of one page, just write, who am I if trading disappeared tomorrow? Would you still be a good husband, a good father, a good friend, a hard worker, curious, reliable, disciplined? Would you feel like you just completely lost yourself? And if that question makes you uncomfortable, good, right? This is where the work starts. It's when you come outside of your comfort zones, that's where growth happens. Now, here's what I've learned, right? The best traders I know, books, interviews, talking to them in life, they already know who they are. They know who they are. Trading is simply one thing they do. It isn't who they are. Let's talk about validation for a second. I think this one can be a little sneaky because a lot of people don't want to admit this part. Like some traders they're not just trying to make money. They're trying to be seen. People around them in Discord, on Twitter, they're trying to prove their parents wrong, right? They're trying to prove their spouse wrong, their parents wrong, their old boss wrong. People who laughed when they said that they were going to trade. People who said, yeah, good luck with that. And maybe there's even more to that. They're trying to prove themselves right. That they weren't crazy, that they weren't wasting their time. They've been doing this for 2 years, right? They got to stick this out because if I can't, then all this years are wasted, right? That really they're different, right? And look, like I get it. I get it. That feeling's powerful, but I think it can also be dangerous. The second trading becomes a tool for validation, self-validation or outward validation, your P&L becomes emotional currency. That's all it is, right? A green day doesn't just feel like a green day. It feels like proof. See, I knew I could do this, right? I knew they were wrong, right? Fuck you, teacher. Fuck you, mom, right? I knew I was special. But what happens on a red day? What happens? What happens when you lose, right? Now it's not just a loss. It feels like rejection, right? Ooh, do I hate rejection, right? It feels like everyone who doubted you was right. They were right, right? I feel like your dream, my dream, it just got laughed at again, right? And this is where traders lose their freaking minds. That's when they start revenge trading, right? That's when they oversize. That's when there's no stop losses that goes out the window. Well, they start seeing ghosts in the charts and forcing setups and taking those almost trades because they're not trying to trade well anymore, right? They're just trying to get their dignity back. And that's a completely different game. The market is not a place to settle old emotional debts. It's not. Let me say that again. The market is not here to settle your old emotional debts. If you are just clicking buttons trying to prove something to yourself or to people who aren't even in the same room, you're not trading, you're performing. And who the fuck are you performing for? The market, man, it's a brutal audience, right? So how do you actually fix this? Now, first, again, I think you take a week, from posting about trading. I think there's no screenshots, no P&L, no funded account updates, no Discord flexing. Not trying to look locked in, right? Just trade your process in silence and pay attention to how uncomfortable that makes you. Because if not posting a win makes you feel less valuable, then that tells you something. Now, I want you to stop checking other people's P&Ls. Quit pocket watching. Who cares, right? Who cares what Joe and Jim and Bob are doing, right? Stop scrolling trading view ideas. Stop watching random traders, post perfect entries after the fact. You're just feeding the exact wound that you're trying to heal. Like when you compare yourself to other people, all that does is what? Turns your trading journey into a public scoreboard. And the second you're playing on someone else's scoreboard or against someone else, you abandon your own process. Now, third, I want you to ask yourself this question. If nobody ever knew I was a trader, would I still want to do this? No Instagram bio, no screenshots, no payout posts, no status, no proving anyone wrong. Just the work, man. Would you still show up? Would you still journal? Would you still backtest? Would you still sit through those boring freaking days? Would you still respect risk? Because if the answer is no, then trading might not be the thing you love. The image of it, though, of being a trader might be the thing you love more. And I think those two things are not the same. Now, fourth, look. Go study people outside of trading who had to disappear for years before they got good. Athletes, musicians, comedians, writers, business owners. I think most of them had long seasons that nobody ever clapped for. Nobody cared. Nobody validated the work, right? They just built, right? That's the skill traders need, the ability to do the boring work without the applause, right? No, go listen to interviews with people who, you know, trained for 10 years before anyone knew their name, read biographies, watch documentaries, study the part of success that nobody posts, because the market and trading is filled with bullshit. We know that. It's filled with LARPers and bullshit and rented Lambos. It just is, right? The market rewards the trader who can execute without needing that attention. Now, look, write this in your journal, right? I want you to write this down. Who am I still trying to prove wrong? And it might be yourself, right? Is it a parent, a friend, an ex, a boss, someone from school, you know, the past you, right? And then ask a follow-up question, right? Answer this follow-up question. How is that showing up in my trading? Because if every trade is is secretly an argument with someone from your past or yourself, you're going to keep forcing trades that just were never part of your plan. And until you stop needing the market to validate you, the market will just keep controlling you. Now, look, before I keep going, I just want to make something like crystal clear here. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you every single root cause that exists. It's impossible. There are hundreds of different reasons that people self-sabotage themselves. Maybe yours comes from your childhood. Maybe it comes from financial trauma. Maybe it's perfectionism. Maybe it's ADHD. Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's a gambling addiction. Maybe it's a need for control. Maybe it's people pleasing. Maybe it's the fear of success, as much as it could be the fear of failure. Maybe it's something you've never even thought about. The point of this video isn't for me to diagnose you, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just a dude, man, who has somewhat figured himself out, right? So look, the point is to wake you up for the idea that there is a reason. Your job after this video is to become curious enough to find it, because once you know the root, you stop wasting years treating the symptom. Now, look, before we wrap this up, I want to kind of just rapid fire a few more examples just to give you things to think about. Again, not trying to diagnose you. I'm just here to try to get you to think differently. If we just do the same thing that everyone else does in the markets, then we're going to fail because everyone else fails. We got to think differently, man. Let's fix us. I'm trying to get you here. I'm trying to get you thinking, right? So look, somewhere in here, you might hear yourself. You might just, okay, that sounds like me a little bit. How about perfectionism? If you're constantly tweaking your strategy or waiting for the perfect setup or chasing indicators or freezing because you want 100% certainty, don't just study trading, study perfectionism, study sports psychology, read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. Now, you can also watch interviews with elite performers. Tom Brady's got a bunch of good ones out there who compete under scrutiny. I mean, that guy went, undrafted and arguably the GOAT, right? Trading will never give you certainty. It rewards people who can only execute, who can execute despite uncertainty. The markets are probable. They're not certain, right? How about the need for control? Do you constantly move your stop? Do you refuse to accept the loss? Do you need to be in control of every single outcome? Study acceptance, study mindfulness, study poker, man. Study decision-making under uncertainty, because the market doesn't care how badly you want control. It only cares how well you manage risk. How much do I make when I lose? How much do I win when I'm right? And that's it. Now, this is a big one, especially in this day and age with shorts and short form content and TikTok. Dopamine, man. Do you trade because you're bored? Do you find yourself opening charts every 5 minutes? Do weekends drive you crazy because the market is closed? Maybe you're not addicted to trading. Maybe you're just addicted to stimulation, right? To activity. Now, there's a book out here that I would point you towards, which is Dopamine Nation. But you can also audit your screen time, take a weekend completely away from the charts, man, and ask yourself why it feels uncomfortable. Now, this is a big one. Maybe one of the biggest, and that is financial pressure, right? If trading has to pay your bills, every trade becomes emotional. Every setup feels like survival. This is a terrible place to trade from, probably the worst in all of trading. I have met maybe one person who has overcome this in 10 years of trading. Boy, having that 1,000-pound gorilla on your back in trading, just a recipe for disaster. Your nervous system cannot execute objectively when it believes your life depends on the next trade. Your brain is going to do something, right? So I think sometimes the best thing you can do for your trading is improve your finances outside of trading. Build that emergency fund, reduce your dependence on the P&L, Give yourself room to breathe and think, and just don't overload your nervous system. Now, people pleasing, right? Do you constantly look for someone else's opinion before entering? Ben, how does this look, right? Do you need confirmation? Discord, Twitter, YouTube. Maybe your issue isn't confidence. Maybe you spent your whole life looking to other people for approval, right? Practice making small decisions on your own. Just try it, right? Reduce the fucking social media bullshit, right? Who cares what some 18-year-old kid in a rented Lambo says? Build trust in yourself before you try building trust in a strategy. And look, another one is just trying to be right, needing to be right. Do you average down, refuse to stop out, argue with the market? You might not hate losing money. You might just hate being wrong. Now, this is a big book for anyone, and it's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. Learn poker, right? Learn probabilities. Learn that good decisions and good outcomes are not always the same thing. Professionals, man, like you talk to any professional trader or watch any TED Talk or read any of these books out, they're not trying to be right? You know, people ask me all the time on live streams, like, hey, what do you think, you know, Tesla's going to do tomorrow morning? Bro, if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be on a freaking private island somewhere. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be right. I'm just managing risk, right? I have a certain edge. I'm looking for it. A little bit of risk on. Sometimes it wins, sometimes it doesn't, right? Professionals are trying to manage and make good decisions over and over and over again. Survive long enough, right? Now, notice what I didn't do in this video, right? I didn't give you another indicator, right? I think indicators are bullshit. Fight me. You want to have a debate on that? Let's go. I didn't give you another strategy. Every strategy works for somebody. I didn't tell you to change your moving average settings. I didn't, you need order flow or you need fib or you need this, right? I pointed you away from the charts. Because if trading is truly a reflection of the person sitting behind the screen, then sometimes the fastest way to become a better trader is to stop studying trading for a little while, right? We don't need another YouTube video on trading. You probably don't need another hour on the charts. You need to start studying yourself. And that's something we spend a lot of time on inside a Tactical Edge, inside the clubhouse that is Tactical Edge, the brotherhood, the sisterhood that we've created here. Yeah, we teach strategy. Yes, we teach execution. Yes, we trade live together every single day. Yes, we break down the markets together. We also spend a shitload of time helping each other identify the patterns that keep showing up in our decisions. Not because we're therapists, but because we've learned something after working with hundreds of traders. Two people can take the exact same trade or make the exact same mistake, but for completely different reasons, right? Two people can FOMO or revenge trade, but the reasoning is different. If you never identify your reason, you're going to spend years trying to fix the wrong problem. You're going to waste time. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you break a trading rule, do not ask, how do I stop doing this? Why do I keep doing this? And you got to really ask yourself the root. Why did this make sense to me in that moment? What made me push that button? That's it. That single question. And it might change your trading more than the next 100 hours you spend looking for another strategy.